Welcome everybody, we are ready to start. And it's a great honor to see you today in Łódź. And for the 10th time, we've organized the public speaking contest. And we are so proud to have you. All the best bravos for you.
Can I interrupt just for a moment? First of all, please, everybody, switch off, mute, put into playing mode, whatever. Just make sure that your phone will not ring, will not vibrate. Okay? That's the most important thing. Okay? And please check it right now. Don't trust yourself that you remember that you have already done it. Okay? Just check it. All right. Thank you.
Thanks. That was our fabulous host today, Magda Dworakowska. And me, Martin Stanowski, I would also like to remind you that I would really urge you to try to suppress your need to move or walk out of the hall during the speakers presenting. Okay, I know these are simple rules, but sometimes we may forget. So just in case, please remember, out of respect to somebody's creativity, hard work, please remember about that. Also, I would like to remind you that the time limit is 4 minutes, right? And we're going to measure the time, and the jury will have the information of how long the speech took. And that will be taken also into consideration when it comes to grading, right? Well, we cannot simply allow to change the rules, and really like you to understand and respect this limit. It's a great pleasure that we've got the 10th public speaking contest, and you're here because you have come from different regions: Gdańsk, Lublin, Wrocław, Kraków, Warszawa, and of course Łódź. And this is thanks to local organizers that those competitions, those local contests came to life, and we would like to very deeply, very emotionally express our thanks to all the local organizers. Without them, that simply wouldn't be possible. It wouldn't be also possible without those fabulous teachers who are also here as companions to our dear speakers. And probably this couldn't also happen without fabulous jury. And this year, the jury is Debbie West from TESOL France. Kirst Bowie from Sharing One Language. And Sania Koniagic from Sharing One Language as well. We've got to say that TESOL France and SOL are our long-standing partners, and they help us with almost every kind of achievement that we have. So thank you very much for your kind presence. I would like to also remind you that the jury that we have are professionals. They are grading you. They are giving you marks upon the clear rules which were described in the invitation to this public speaking contest, and your teachers and speakers and teachers had time to take a look at them, and we do our best to be objective and fully professional. I do understand that always every contest, every competition bears a huge emotional load. So that may be the case that you do not fully agree with the verdict, and that's life. And if you wish, please be kind to the jurors. You may speak to them, you may ask them for guidance, but please respect their verdict, okay? they do the grading separately, and only later we adapt the figures, right? So we try to do our best when it comes to objectivity, but remember, even in such a beautiful art as storytelling or speaking publicly, when it comes to contests, there must be some rules, and there's always the winner. Obviously, the winners are all of you, because in my awareness, there are only two nationwide contests like this in Poland, and our is the longest standing, with the greatest history and achievements, and we try to make it better and better with every year. Maybe let's time to remind you the topic: learning from mistakes, how every challenge is an opportunity. Present it from your perspective, share your story. This year, we decided to bring a little bit of storytelling to your presentations. You may use this aspect of storytelling. You may also decide to talk about the stories from more general perspective. That's up to you. But we have chosen this because we, with our lives, with our memories, we are full of stories. And there cannot be a better story, and sometimes the funniest story, than learning from mistakes. That's sometimes painful, that's sometimes funny, especially when you look at it from the distance. However, they all encapsulate very strong element. We can learn from it. And that's why we would like to invite you to this public speaking competition. As you know, we have divided our contest into three categories. The first category is for the public schools, public primary schools, right? So this is the lineup. Please check if everything is all right. If somebody's missing.
Yes, Mohammed is missing, but he resigned.
Okay, okay, that's unfortunate. Okay, so do you have any questions? So we do apologize for a slight delay, but okay, just checking. Okay, maybe at this point it would be also wise to check some other contestants. Okay, because if anything happens, that's better know now than later. So the second category is like this. Is everything all right? Okay. And of course, that's the category of high schools. And the third category is of the native speakers or native-like speakers.
And here's Sophia Chica. Sophia Chica is not here.
Okay. Then we can start. And the first speaker is Michalina Małolepsza. Michalina Małolepsza, welcome.
Can I use the microphone? Good morning, everyone. My name is Michalina, and I'm a passionate 15-year-old student with a keen interest in chemistry. For the annual school talent show, I decided to present the reaction between baking soda and vinegar to inflate a balloon. Wanting to make my project stand out, a real goldfish bowl, I scaled up the quantities for more dramatic, spectacular effect. Honestly, I did not have any idea what drove me to act against the teacher's instructions or science facts. On the day of the show, I mixed the ingredients in front of my schoolmates and teachers. As you may have guessed, the reaction was too dynamic. The mixture started to overflow, causing the balloon to burst. My solution spilled onto the table, the floor, and me. I was standing there feeling embarrassed and disheartened. What a mess! What a mess! The words kept gnawing on my brain and I couldn't let them go. After this breathtaking performance, my chemistry teacher approached me to discuss what happened. We analyzed the experiment, and she explained me that I did not calculate the proportions properly for the scaled-up version. I was also encouraged to document the experiment, emphasizing that unexpected results are a natural part of scientific exploration. I listened to her advice and made a project report. I published it on the Learning from Mistakes section in the school magazine. I pointed there the importance of proper measurements and the potential risks of chemical reactions without prior testing. I wasn't a winner that day, but I wasn't a loser either. The experience taught me that mistakes are not failures, but opportunities to learn and become more responsible. Analyzing it, I gained a deeper understanding of scientific phenomena. All mistakes I made were not endpoints, but rather stepping stones to become more aware of self-development and constant improvement. I hope next time when you make a mistake, you will remind yourself of my story and draw conclusions from it. Thank you.
Hello everyone. We've all met here today because we understand the importance of learning from our mistakes. I came here to share my thoughts and maybe inspire other people who will hear this speech. We all know that mistakes can be really annoying and uncomfortable. They often shake our confidence or make us embarrassed. They aren't a great feeling, but they also aren't completely useless. Think about it. How do we learn important stuff that really comes in handy? Most of it is learned from mistakes. I want to tell you guys my story and make you learn a valuable lesson. So it starts like this. Back then, I was a huge egoist. I've always thought I'm the best at everything, so I stopped listening to my parents. I even stopped learning for my schoolwork because I thought I don't have to study at all. And just like that, everything went wrong. So, first of all, my grades suddenly got worse. In the meantime, I also became a lot more lazy and lost love to things that I've always enjoyed. For example, basketball didn't bring me as much joy as it used to do. I didn't have energy to do anything, and I still couldn't see any signs. Whenever someone told me that I changed and that I'm not the same as before, I just brushed it off. The moment I finally realized I messed up was when I got the worst grade out of the whole class. I was devastated. I was always the best, and suddenly I felt like I'm the worst at everything I do. So I decided to have a long talk with my parents. And guess what? It actually helped me. They told me that no one is perfect and we all make mistakes, but it's our choice whether we learn from them or do the opposite and bring ourselves down. Thomas Edison once said, I have not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. His mindset is the perfect mindset for every single one of us. That's the mindset of growth and determination. when I got the worst grade out of everyone, I couldn't bear it. I didn't dare to look for my actions and maybe find an important lesson. Instead, I decided to lock myself in my room and do nothing all day. I wouldn't have done the same now because I'm basically a completely different person. Now, I finally understand the importance of perspective and treat mistakes not as dead ends, but as detours. Also, you can't expect that success will come to you immediately after you start. Look at the careers of successful people. They all had to go through a long and hard way to reach success. For example, Bill Gates. His way to success was hard, but he managed to get through it because he didn't give up. And that's why every mistake is a lesson and it brings us one step closer to becoming the best versions of ourselves.
Here,
Good morning. My name is Lucy, and today I would like to share my story with you. So, here it goes. There are over 8 billion people in the world. Everyone faces difficulties, problems, challenges every day. But is there anyone among us who has never made a mistake? I don't think so. I believe that mistakes aren't a failure, but an opportunity for further development because it's from them that we draw the most valuable conclusions. There are lessons from mistakes. Let me tell you my story. I practice karate and compete in competitions. Always podiums, medals, congratulations. But eventually, one day came defeat. The bitterness of disappointment. Then a thought struck me. I couldn't do it. I felt. I decided. Never again. If you are better than me, there is no point. For why I thought this failure defined me. Only when my emotions subsided did I realize that sport isn't only about winning. It's about fighting and development. I started training differently, with a new attitude, without pressure. And guess what? Later, in the same competition, I took first place. Now I know that this mistake was a lesson and an opportunity for my development. Because mistakes should be like a trampoline from which we bounce and soar high. If I had given up, I wouldn't be who I am today. My life taught me that a mistake isn't a failure. A mistake isn't a disaster. A mistake isn't the end of the world. A mistake is an opportunity that whispers in your ear. Hey, don't be afraid. I just want to remind you that you can do better. Just try again. Mistakes don't define our value. They show us the path. Maybe sometimes winding, maybe with obstacles, but always leading to the desired goal. To sum up, mistakes from which draw conclusions or opportunities for development. They're a completely natural and inseparable part of our lives. I want to leave you with one thought today. Mistakes allow us to learn something and become a better, stronger, and wiser version of ourselves. Remember, if you make mistakes, it doesn't mean you're weak. It means that you're a human. Thank you very much for your attention.
help? Give me. Okay, this one, perfect. Once again, Maurycy Babiarz, a round of applause.
As Einstein once said, anyone who has never made a mistake has never tried anything new. Why are we afraid to make mistakes, even though it's a common belief that it's okay to make them? The truth is that it depends on a lot of factors, such as your attitude, others' tolerance and perspective on mistakes, as well as the circumstances. Some people are afraid to take risks because of fear of failure, negative self-judgment, and low self-esteem, while others may be afraid of bad assessment from their peers, which leads me to my next point. Some people see failure as a reason to critique and even mock someone's work, which might negatively affect the outcome because they're scared of mistakes. This phenomenon is especially relevant in situations where one's mistake can harm the prospects of the entire group, such as in team sports. Going back to Einstein's quote, anyone who has never made a mistake has never tried anything new, raises a significant question. Why should we take risks? That does not have a definitive answer, but in my opinion, it's because it opens and creates opportunities that we would not get if we did not take a chance. For example, if you got a question wrong in maths class, instead of treating it as a failure, try to view it as a learning opportunity and make sure not to make the same mistake the next time. This was one of the mistakes I made in my life. Let's look at some more. I've made so many of them, it's hard to comprehend. Off the top of my head, I can name the time I tripped on the stairs because I was too concerned about the game I was playing on my iPad. The tablet was totaled, and so was my habit of scrolling while walking. The time I completely forgot my homework. I was so embarrassed that ever since that day, I've been writing down every assignment in my notebook. I've not forgotten it ever since. Or the time I overcooked my pasta. Now I make sure to use a timer. In conclusion, your mindset is very important. If you only look at the bad side, then you'll be driven to believe that any kind of risks are not worth taking. Although, if you view mistakes as learning opportunities, then you'll have an easier time coping with various situations in life. Remember, mistakes may look bad, but they're opportunities that help you learn, grow, evolve, and thrive. Thank you.
And our next speaker is Alicja Wąsek. Okay. Is it fine?
A person who never made a mistake, never tried anything new. Making mistakes is an important part of life. All people make mistakes and learn from them. The only way they can be avoided is to never do anything. Therefore, in my opinion, it is necessary to make mistakes. Every challenge is an opportunity to learn from errors. When we first started walking, we would stumble and fall down within few steps until we learned how to walk perfectly. Mistakes are like these falls, without which we would never excel at anything. But one thing we should always keep in mind is we should never let these blunders stop us from continuing to work. Mistakes are lessons for us which help us grow and reach newer heights. Here is my story. Last weekend, my friend and I decided to go on a bike trip to the nearest forest. My mom told me to check my bike before a ride. She also reminded me not to go off the trail. Of course, I said, and we set off. Everything started when we were in the middle of the forest. After a few minutes of our ride, I noticed that I had a puncture in my tire. I wasn't able to ride and I had to push my bike. I was very tired because there was a lot of sand on the road. Suddenly, I saw a white path just next to the trail, which led in the same direction. I thought it would be better to walk that way because it was a hard surface. I persuaded my friend and we turned right into this path. Within a few minutes, we were in the middle of nowhere. We got lost. We didn't know what to do. We were exhausted and frustrated. Unfortunately, I didn't have any reception on my phone and we weren't able to go anywhere. It was getting dark and we were almost crying. It's not nice when you are down in the dense forest and you know that all around there are a lot of animals, which was petrifying. We didn't have any choice and we had to continue our walk. Fortunately, after a few hours of wandering with our bikes, we got to the main road where we could call our parents. I made a mistake because I ignored my mom's words. I knew it was my fault. I didn't listen to her. My mistake made me realize that I should listen to people who love me because they always try to help. In my 13 years of living, I have grown a lot since I realized that. Mistakes help you understand how you can do things differently and better. They mold you to be the best version of yourself. They are said to be the best teachers. When a person does something wrong while doing something, it stays in his mind forever. He doesn't easily forget it and avoids repeating such slips. I think mistakes are necessary. It shapes you to become a better, wiser, and a stronger person who is prepared to face further challenges as well. Thank you.
Dear participants, we are starting a new category of secondary schools, and the first speaker is Jagoda Mateja.
Good morning, everyone. Today, I would like to talk about something we all do on a daily basis, but sometimes it still remains a taboo topic. What I find extremely shocking because studies suggest that an average person makes it anywhere between 15 to 500 per day. Of course, these are mistakes. But before we start to deeply analyze this process, let me activate your creativity a bit. Okay, so imagine that accidentally you went back to the past and wake up in the body of your 2-year-old self. The day you're going to experience will be dedicated to learn how to walk. So basically, you try to make a single small step, but after a long time you're trying, you're falling down over and over again. You feel mad and frustrated. And now, here's the question. Would you give up on trying to learn how to walk at this moment? Of course not. It will be really too dangerous decision. But wait, why do we treat our present mistakes in that way? So maybe let's go back to the very beginning. What is a mistake? Simply, it is an action or a decision that leads to an unsuccessful result. It might be as small as buying a wrong size of shoes, or bigger, like failing the most valuable exam during our studies. What is hard to accept is that a mistake is unavoidable. But we must bear in mind that a mistake isn't just an accident, it's also an evidence that we are actively doing something and trying to keep going forward. In fact, the biggest mistake you can ever make is not to make any mistakes at all. That sounds strange, doesn't it? But after considering it, if our mind encourages us to avoid every single error at any price, we are unable to make any improvement. That's the way of thinking that keeps us stuck. But of course, we all know that pain is closely connected to making mistakes. But wait, why do we? The answer lies in our psychology. When we are growing up, our brains are developing every single day. And at some point of our adolescence, when we make a mistake, the same part of the brain that lights up when we feel a physical pain is activated. So it literally hurts to make mistakes. Evolution has taught us that making mistakes may trigger off complete disaster. If you lived 2 million years ago and by mistake ate a poisonous berry, the results would be horrifying. Now we don't have to face such fatal results, but the pain remains unchanged. And here's the key: pain doesn't need to be an enemy. Let's think about it as an information that we care about the outcome of some activity. If we can deal with the discomfort, process it, and use it in a constructive way, we will be able to reach our dream goal. Sadly, it's easier said than done. Each of you must find your own way in how to deal with the pain of growing. What gives me a power to deal with this discomfort is Stephen McCrane's quote: "The master has spent more time than the beginner has even tried." Is there something more true? Every single artist, athlete, thinker, and inventor you admire has spent so many times and it didn't stop. They treat a mistake not as a wall, but as an opportunity to keep going forward. Let me leave you with this. The goal isn't to eliminate a mistake. It is to welcome them. Thank you very much for your attention.
And our next speaker is Antonina Caban.
Every child has a dream. The vision of having... Every child has a dream. The vision of having a career as a well-known football player or becoming an astronaut is realistic and attainable. These dreams often become the foundation of a child's identity. Although, in the course of years, many start to realize that the opportunity has already passed and, more importantly, that the dream was never truly within reach. Ever since I was a little girl, I envisioned myself as the most talented and skilled flautist, performing on grand stages accompanied by the best orchestras in the world. When I was finally of the age that music school was an option, I was thrilled to start my journey with the flute. However, my parents encouraged me to choose the piano instead, believing it was more versatile and practical. Not being much of a rebellious child, I gave in. Looking back at my decision, I consider it the biggest mistake of my life. Sadly, not the last. For 6 years, I had been torturing myself playing the piano. I put hours into practicing the instrument, which never felt like mine. All I could think about was my childhood dream. Finally, I graduated. I felt so drained, I thought I would never touch another instrument again. Nevertheless, months without music made me feel like something was missing in my life. Instead of finally starting to play the flute, I made the same mistake yet another time. I joined a band with my friends, playing bass guitar. Not before long, I found myself distracted again, as I kept thinking of my younger self, the little girl who would be so disappointed in me for giving up on my dream. Even those years, which I consider misspent, admitting the obvious, did give me much. I've learned to play with other people, I've experienced music school, but most importantly, I gained the basics of creating music, which inevitably proved to be useful just a year later. I refused to make the same mistake I'd made so many times before. I auditioned for second-degree music school, this time as a flautist. Doubting myself, having no support as everyone warned me not to get my hopes up. Sure, you can try, they said, but don't be disenchanted if it doesn't work out. always those words of sympathy. Since every other candidate had already been playing the flute their entire life, I was years behind. But this time, I was determined not to let the opportunity pass me by. And after many years of mistakes and hesitation, I was accepted. The joy, the accomplishment which I felt in that moment weren't only for me, but also for the little girl inside me who finally got to pursue her dream. Now, it is extremely hard to keep up with all the work and practice, but the thought of finally playing the flute after such a long time of second thoughts and bad decisions is what drives me to continue despite all the challenges. Audrey Hepburn, a famous British actress, once said, "Nothing is impossible. Even the word itself says, I'm possible." You should always pursue your goals, no matter how hard and unobtainable they seem, because in the end, when you finally get to live your dream, nothing else matters. Thank you.
Honorable jury, dear fellow contestants, one cannot be infallible. Therefore, one cannot exclusively make flawless decisions. In the moment we realize we made a mistake, we focus solely on the negative impact it may have on our lives. However, a thought that should be emphasized is of positive aspects. Most importantly, the benefit of learning. Learning from your mistakes is all about recognizing similar patterns in past and present situations, reminding yourself what your next step should be. What I personally learned from my mistakes is to always aim higher than what I estimate myself to be. Not so long ago, my local theatre was doing a musical production of The Addams Family. Days and nights I dreamt about the role of Morticia. You know her, black, long, luscious hair, beautiful Gothic woman. Despite the positive feedback everyone around gave me, I did not think I was good enough for any of the main characters. I ended up auditioning for a very minimal role of a zombie butler for the family, and it consisted mostly of standing still in ginormous boots that restricted my movement greatly. My mistake here was not underestimating my skills, but not even trying for the dream role. Needless to say, later I was buried in regret. And there I was, on stage for 3 hours, with a half-conscious countenance, merely muttering vowels, as a zombie would do. I peeked at the main characters with envy, struggling to keep composure as I dealt with the grief of what could have been. Since then, I tried out many situations out of the humbling zone established by my low self-esteem. And surprisingly, everything worked out. More so, without that, I would not be here today. Abandoning the comfort of overqualification is an excellent opportunity for further growth, which is universally needed. What everyone should remember is that learning from your mistakes and applying these newly recognized truths to your life is the easiest way to achieve the maximum potential of your existence. However, an unremitting act of pedantry is just an obstacle, so don't be too hard on yourselves. After all, mistakes are a part of human nature, so why not embrace and make the most of them? Thank you.
And our next speaker is Zuzanna Klimowska.
Imagine this. You're standing in a spotlight. Your performance is about to begin. For the last 3 months, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, meant showing up to practice like your life depended on it. Remembering choreography steps, reviewing the counts in your head again and again and again, sacrificing meeting your friends on the weekends just to train for those 2 more hours. And then, as you're finally on stage, about to show everyone, but most importantly, yourself, that your efforts were worth it, it all comes crashing down. You suddenly can't breathe. It feels like the walls are closing in. Your legs feel weak. After all this trial and error, all that's left is overwhelming angst. You're trying with all your might and you just can't do it. That was how I learned the hard way that pushing your body further and further beyond its limit doesn't amount to much good. And although get enough rest before your performance was something I heard from everyone around, it wasn't that simple to just let it go and relax, especially if you're a goal-oriented person and there's that silly little whisper at the back of your head telling you, oh, maybe if you were practicing right now, you'd do better next time. I was just overwhelmed standing there, but that made me realize something. If I was there after making that mistake, why shouldn't I treat it as an opportunity to learn? Why shouldn't I prove that even though I made this mistake, I can get up from it? I was left devastated after that failed performance, but it also made me realize something. Our mistakes mistakes aren't the only characteristic that should be minded of. Because while, sure, it is devastating to be standing there in front of all the people overwhelmed with the anxiety, it's also a chance, and we should treat it as that. It's not only the mistake itself that matters, but also what you do with it. Sure, I could sit there wondering about the amount of things that went wrong, but I can also go out there and take action to look for a solution. Dance was the thing that taught me that while I should practice, I should also allow myself to make that mistake. If I were to deny myself making it, I would also deny myself an opportunity to learn. What do you think makes a bigger impact on our minds? Feeling what it's like, or being put under a carefully crafted cover and isolated from anything that might hurt? What I finally learned is not to be afraid of making those mistakes. I've learned that change can be fortunate because, as Albert Hubbard, an English writer and philosopher, once said, the greatest mistake you can make in life is to be continually fearing you will ever make one. If we would all stop fearing mistakes, we would see the amount of opportunities to learn that they bring us. Just as in dance, you'll often bruise your knees before taking your final bow, you'll often make mistakes in life trying to achieve success. Thank you.
The next speaker is Szymon Czepiel.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I wanted to share a story. A story not of a great success, but a story about a journey from doubt to strength. See, for the longest time, I believed that success had a similar face, and for some sad reason, it never happened to look like mine. I believed I was too slow, too awkward, and I marked each of my mistakes as a proof that I, as a person, was not enough. And when in life I saw my classmates, my colleagues, or even at competitions sometimes, my fellow participants, as they achieve great victories, I clapped for them, I smiled, of course, but inside I compared. I compared myself to them. And the point is, my greatest mistake throughout that time was that I valued myself in our method that was comparing myself to others. And it was not right, but there's an interesting thing about change, dear ladies and gentlemen. You see, change rarely arrives with thunder, and sometimes change arrives quietly, maybe even in a form of disguise. And it did to me. You see, I have a dear friend of mine, and one day she was treated very badly by her colleagues. So, we go out to talk about it, and the thing is, she always supported me throughout my life, and always she tried to show me that I have this value in myself. And so we talk, maybe 3-4 hours pass, and I tried to light her mood. And I did. So I walked her back home, and I think, okay, we're just gonna say goodbye to each other and go to our places. But no, she turns to me, she hugs me and says very important words. She says, "Thank you for what you did today. I'm happy to have you in my life." And that day, that moment changed something in me, because in helping her see her worth, I realized that I had it in me, that there was this hidden value. And it is in every one of you, okay? There is a value, but sometimes you need to discover it through others. So I stepped away from the race, from the scoreboard, and I began asking myself better questions. Not why am I not like them, but what's beautiful about being me? Not how far behind am I, but how far have I come? Because sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, confidence is not noise. It is knowing. It's the quiet heartbeat that says, I belong here too. And as the Roman saying goes, comparatio es insima felicitas. Comparison is the enemy of happiness. So, for that mistake that I've made in my life, comparing myself to others, it became a chance, an opportunity to seek the value inside me that I never knew I had. So here's the thing I want you to remember. Our deepest purpose in life is not to outshine the others, but for our value as a person, we need to become a light, a beacon that is leading others to success. Thank you.
Let's welcome our next contestant, Adam Meuges.
Have you ever done everything right? Followed every step, prepared as best as you could, and still ended up failing? It's one of the worst feelings, isn't it? Today, I would like to discuss something that happens to all of us, no matter how smart, talented, or well prepared go through, making mistakes, or more accurately, learning from them. I just took a chemistry test. I studied hard, memorized formulas, did reactions. I really tried. I walked into the class confident, but when I got my test back, it said 2 out of 5. I was shocked, confused, maybe even a little bit embarrassed. How could this be? As I looked at my test, I saw my answer, or to be more precise, my mistake. I had completed a chemical equation and everything appeared fine at first, except that it wasn't balanced. I had omitted that one vital step. One small mistake, and it cost me most of my points. I was upset at first. It didn't seem fair to me that one thing ruined almost everything. But then I realized this wasn't about the test. This was a lesson in life. You see, mistakes like these, small, frustrating, sometimes even hurtful, are opportunities in disguise. That 2 out of 5 helped to remind me more than any lecture could. It taught me that even when we think we have done everything right, we have to stay on our toes, stay vigilant, and pay attention to the smallest details. Most of all, it humbled me. It taught me that no matter how prepared we think we are only humans. We err, but we also learn. Since that event, I now double check my work, I think before I rush, and I will definitely never forget to balance a reaction ever again. I hope. J.K. Rowling, the author of Harry Potter, once spoke about fringe benefits of failure in her TED Talk. She talked about how hitting rock bottom became the solid foundation on which she built her life. After experiencing rejection, poverty, and deep personal loss, she found clarity, strength, and purpose. Her story reminds us that failure isn't just something to overcome. It is something that can illuminate our path. Like Rowling, we can use our mistakes as turning points, not endpoints. But the thing is that we are so afraid to fail that we forget about how much strength failure carries. Getting something wrong doesn't indicate that you're not good enough. It indicates that you are learning. It indicates that you are moving. And every step, even the wrong one, moves you forward, if you're willing to learn. So, if you're sitting here thinking about something that you messed up, whether it was a test, a relationship, or a choice you wish you hadn't made, here is something that you should keep in mind. Your mistakes don't define you. What you do next does. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Antonina Madej.
Challenges are gifts that force us to search for a new center of gravity. Do not fight them. Just find a new way to stand. Are these my words? No, I could only wish they were. There is, although, someone who didn't just survive trauma, but transformed it into strength, which turned into greatness, shaping not only their own life, but lives of millions. With a total of 49 awards, with best-selling books, and one of the longest-running talk shows in history. Oprah Winfrey, she knows what she's talking about. Her huge success isn't though what moved me the most. It's how she made her way up to the top. She was raised in poverty by a single teenage mother, abused at just 9, pregnant by 14, only to lose her baby shortly after birth. And when she decided to escape her cruel reality, she ended up as a young girl working in television, where she was told that being too emotional wouldn't get her anywhere. I was myself told that I'm too emotional, too expressive, I talk too much, I'm too loud, and I used to be hurt. And I used to try and change it up for the sake of people around me, and I never thought that what I considered my worst trait could actually be such a strength. And I thought to myself, maybe I could one day be like Oprah. Because she wasn't flawless. She was just an incredibly strong woman, and I wanted to be like her. I wanted to have this magical power of transforming challenges into chances, of overcoming pain and my so-called flaws. I wished more than anything that I could see them as a part of me, one that people could laugh about me, not find annoying. So what did she teach me? I want to fight for myself. And what was my worst mistake? It was thinking I need to change in order to fit into anyone's liking. Ladies and gentlemen, life gets hard. Life gets unfair and painful, and fate can be cruel. But what is most important in the end? What we choose to do with it. You know, when I was preparing for this speech, I realized that there is nothing quite as courageous as the human race. And what's the best part? Everyone has the power to live by that courage. And digging through Oprah's history was like riding an emotional roller coaster filled with astonishment, with hope, with doubt, and then with peace. Peace that I feel now, sharing her story with you, and peace that came with the realization that opportunities are everywhere. We just need to take a look around. Winfrey once said, "Think like a queen. A queen is not afraid to fail because failure is another stepping stone to greatness." So let's all be queens. Let's be kings. That is what I learned from Oprah. Thank you.
Our next contestant is Filip Dubaniewicz.
We live in a society that glorifies success. We applaud winners, celebrate perfection, and idolize flawless results. But what about failure? We treat it as an imperfection that needs to be hidden, fixed, or avoided at all costs. But let's be honest, no real success story exists without failure. Mistakes aren't the opposite of success. They're the crucial part of it. They're the frustrating, often painful steps that build a future. Many of the world's most successful people's paths are paved with mistakes. James Dyson, for example, he built 5,126 failed prototypes before he created the vacuum. Or Walt Disney, he was told he lacked imagination before building an empire on it. Thomas Edison once said, "I haven't failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Or Niki Lauda, a Formula One world champion and legend, he said, "Winning is one thing, but out of losing, I've always learned more for the future." I couldn't agree more, as my own experience proved that to be true. My friends and I had a vision for a passion project, creating an autonomous hydrofoil drone that would analyze water quality in real time. We spent months on it, designing, building, coding, and we thought we had it all figured out. But the fact is, we absolutely didn't. Our first version failed. It leaked. The structure wasn't durable. Subsequently came the second version, and it was no better. The electronics burnt, the propeller broke, the hydrofoil snatched, and the water drone almost sank. We lost time, we lost money, we lost energy, and most importantly, we almost lost hope. But here's the twist. That failure became the most valuable part of our project. Because once we accepted it, we were finally able to recognize what truly needed to change. We identified flaws in our design, in our assumptions, even in the way we worked as a team. This pushed us to rethink everything, from the structure, through the propulsion, to the way we test ideas. Failure gave us a direction. It forced us to innovate. Next month, our project will be heading to the final of a major national science competition. If we had given up that day, if we had given up, we wouldn't have discovered our true potential hidden behind the walls of failures. The truth is, you shouldn't just be prepared to make mistakes. You should be optimistic about making them. Mistakes make you take routes you wouldn't normally take, and sometimes these new routes lead you somewhere better than your original plan ever could. And here is something I deeply believe. The fear of failing is actually a fear of winning. Winning means taking risks. It means opening yourself up to being wrong, to being judged, to falling. But the real mistake is not trying. It's letting that fear convince you to quit. Mistakes, they're just trials that didn't work yet. The only true mistake is giving up. And as long as you keep going, every try and every lesson is progress. And that's a victory. Thank you very much.
Now, our next contestant in the third category is Jakub Zahara.
Ladies and gentlemen, would I be wrong if I said that each and every one of you has made at least one mistake in your life? Whether that would be from doing ordinary household tasks to your everyday job. The point is that humans are imperfect. Imperfection is what makes us human. We often hear the phrase, learn from your mistakes. It's actually a pretty common motive. I'd even call it universal. We often hear it in books, movies, or even from people around us. However, have you ever taken the advice seriously? Learned something brand new once you hit rock bottom? Well, if you haven't, let me fill you in. A crucial part to this is thinking optimistically. Without thinking optimistically, you will not progress further. Allow me to share my perspective, my story. Although I may not look like a geek, I'm a programmer. And I had this idea to create a relatively simple system that automates a lot of things for people. It was a relatively simple concept, but it had a lot of work. And it was just to get my hands on a couple of dollars using my already existing skills. Despite having loads of people interested in this idea, I realized a couple of inaccuracies that would make my idea shoot itself in the foot. First and foremost, I was short-staffed. I was alone. This was a solo project. There was a lot of work to do, and just for me to release a prototype, it would take ages. Secondly, I couldn't just jump the gun to risk a security vulnerability. I could leak data and other things that are very sensitive. And I could just go on and on about how many inaccuracies I just realized that just came out of thin air. However, you should really focus on what's invisible to the eye. Ladies and gentlemen, this was my all-time lowest. I just sat there and I thought to myself how I could possibly fix this and prevent it from happening again in the future. And then after several days of consideration, it finally hit me. Realizing the wall of challenges that stood in front of me felt like striking gold. But you may wonder, what is this guy talking about? Like, what does he even mean? Simply, the wall of challenges that I encountered would benefit me the most in the long run. They hold valuable information that would prevent these mistakes from happening again in the future. To wrap it up, you should definitely not bite off more than you can chew, unlike me. However, if you encounter any mistakes in life, learn from them and do not think negatively. Use those mistakes as advantages, as they only help strengthen your weaknesses, making you a stronger asset in society. Thank you for your time.
Our next contestant is Zuzanna Danielak.
I am 100% sure that you have had to make tough decisions in your lifetime. Whether that be what school to go to or what subjects to choose in order to satisfy your academic needs. Even as little children, we've had to choose between the red or blue bike or the strawberry or cola flavored lollipop, which at the time felt significant. In hindsight, we might think that such simple decisions have had absolutely no effect on our present selves. But it's those simple choices that allow us to go about the future ones, the ones which are actually significant. Because with a little bit of context, we might realize that the only reason we chose the strawberry lollipop is because a friend preferred the cola one. Such a perspective on decision making puts a lot of pressure in choosing correctly. Sometimes we might be absolutely sure of our decision and not even think twice about the results, while other times we can dwell endlessly and still come up with no idea on how to evade consequences. Personally, it has put me at many crossroads, like the time I thought it was a good idea to study maths at a higher level, even though deep down I knew I could not handle the heat. Such instances are powered by past decisions, and this process is called the butterfly effect. You may or may not have experienced it yourself, but I certainly have. It all began when I moved to Poland and basically started my life from scratch, which may sound like a great opportunity to start over with a clean slate and in a new environment, but it proved to be quite unrewarding. I struggled to keep friendships, therefore I tried to appease everyone, which made me feel good, but it ultimately made me prioritize others over myself. So when my mom called me from school one day, saying that I had to choose between continuing to study with my friends or studying a class with advanced English lessons, I was torn. Not only was it a tough decision to make on the spot and for my young age, but it also made me think about what my future was going to look like. On one hand, I desperately wanted to continue my journey with the English language and harbor the connection that I felt to it. On the other, I was worried what I would do with the people I was most familiar with and who I'd be able to turn to for support. So in the few seconds that I had to decide, I weighed my options and ultimately went with my gut and what I actually enjoyed, and that was English. For a while, I felt guilty for choosing myself and my passion over the ones that I deemed as friends, but I soon realized that those friendships weren't worth sacrificing myself for. For a while, I felt guilty for making this decision, and to this day, I am unsure if I chose well, since I can't rewind time and go down the other path. This has proved to be the most challenging part about making substantial decisions. You truly never know what the future holds in store. Thankfully, in my case, it all paid off, since I could have never imagined the doors that have opened for me since. They've allowed me to expand upon my knowledge and experience the English language in many different forms. And don't get me wrong, I in no way, shape, or form am trying to perpetuate this narrative that academics and yourself should somehow be above all else. When it comes to determining your future and fulfilling goals, you must ask yourself, am I doing this for myself or for others? Because although nice gestures should be much encouraged, taking care of yourself should be non-negotiable. Thank you.
our last participant, our last contestant is Sara Daleros.
I'm pretty sure that everybody in this room thinks that mistakes are something that we should avoid. And turns out that you're right. Mistakes do cause sometimes complicated situations, which are hard to get out of. However, unfortunately for us, there is no such thing as life without mistakes. And it's simply because we're not perfect. We're not some overcomplicated creatures which could predict every single mistake that we make. And even the most complex computers break down and need repairs. So we're not perfect, and we don't know everything. However, we do know enough to know that life isn't fair, nor is it easy, and that it's our responsibility to take our struggles, challenges, and mistakes as an opportunity to learn. Because if a person doesn't or doesn't want to own up to their own mistakes, there is no telling how they will survive in the future. They won't know what to do or how to act when things really turn serious for them. And not only will they have to acknowledge that they did wrong, they will also have to show it in their own progress and change to others. As I said before, mistakes should be a learning experience. That should tell you that they're not necessarily bad. They show you what you could change or do differently. Let's say when you're writing an essay. However, our context today is a bit more than that. We're talking about the mistakes in life, the ones that could easily ruin pretty much everything that's around you. And one of those things is trust. I was out with a friend once after school, and I made the mistake of not calling my parents or calling them back when they called me. Long story short, I came back home late, I had a long lecture, and I was grounded. Now, I was forgiven. The consequences always follow. A mistake like that could easily crush trust in a matter of seconds after so much time of building it up. It didn't matter at that point if I felt sorry or not, because the only thing I could have done was apologize, change my ways, and never do it again. Let me get to the point. My point is, you should not dwell on the wrongings that you have committed in the past. I assume that if you do so, you would only be leading yourself into making more bad decisions. Instead of moping around and feeling sorry for ourselves, we should take these mistakes as opportunities to redeem ourselves, take them into consideration, learn from them. And if we do so, we will not only be able to create a better future for ourselves, but also for the people around us. We shouldn't feel ashamed of learning from our mistakes. And in fact, some people have to learn that lesson. However, nobody said it would be easy. The pressure of our peers, our ego, all of this could contradict to what's the actual right thing to do. But in no circumstance is that an excuse. It's always right to do right, but it's never right to do wrong. And in fact, we should be happy that it causes us to struggle. All these challenges and mistakes that we go through today shape us and mold us into the people that will be in the future, the mature adults that will be able to take care of our problems without any problems, because we've been through this already and we don't have a reason to panic anymore. There is a saying, bad times make strong men make good times make weak men, and weak men make bad times. That's the cycle all of us are going through, whether we like it or not. Is the challenge that makes it sweet. My name is Sarah Dalroth, everyone. Thank you so much for your attention.
Ale wtedy dajemy dopiero o 13. O 13, tak? Sprawdź proszę. Jesteś o 12? Ale tutaj czy na finale? Ladies and gentlemen, that would be it. But also, we would like to say a few words of gratitude to you, because it's the 10th contest, and you're very special for us that you made it. You've made such a long way here, and you proved that there is such a great difference between let me tell you something and let me tell you a story. And you presented beautiful stories with very deep thoughts. And I wish my 7-year-old son was here and understood English, because probably he could learn something from all of you. Yesterday I had a talk with him. Of course, it was a talk after I got the message from his class teacher. It was one of those talks. And it was very emotional for him and for me, because when I look at him, I see myself, and he's making the same mistakes that I made, and he's like behaving emotionally in the same way as I did. And we cried, and the conclusion, as a teacher, I asked him at the end to sum up everything. So what did you take from all this conversation, right? If you were to summarize what it was. And we came to this conclusion that learning from mistakes is tough and very emotional, and you cannot escape from that. But hopefully he will make a lot of mistakes and learn, but he will make them in a safe environment. We would like to ask our dear friend, Dr. Grzegorz Śpiewak. He's an honorary president of IATEFL Poland, our dear friend, also teacher trainer and expert at Macmillan Polska.
Makes me sound like I'm dead. Ja może po polsku zacznę. Powiem, że jak Rob Howard mnie poprosił. For a moment. Proszę. Jak Rob Howard, powiem po raz trzeci, mnie zaprosił, żeby tu z Państwem dzisiaj przez chwilę być, to w ogóle mnie nie ostrzegł, po kim ja będę w ogóle się pojawiał. Więc chciałem powiedzieć, że przypomniałem sobie, jak dzisiaj Was tutaj słuchałem od 1,5 godziny, że kiedyś nieżyjący już mistrz młynarski powiedział, że nie ma nic gorszego niż występować po małpie. Czyli jak wychodzi człowiek na scenę, a przed nim był cyrkowiec i miał, wiecie, wszystkie możliwe wodotryski, no to co ty właściwie masz zrobić? Więc ja się dokładnie w tej chwili tak czuję, że ja nie mam w ogóle nic wam do zaoferowania. Okay, I'll switch to... A nie, jeszcze jedno. Tak jak sobie słuchałem tego Roba, to pomyślałem sobie, i słuchałem was i myślałem o tym, jak ten Rob mi o tym opowiadał, to sobie pomyślałem, no tak, Rob mnie wrobił. Przypadek? Nie sądzę. Now I will switch to English. Apologies for this. I just needed this little joke to start with. And, I had a talk prepared, which Rob had asked me to do. But when I sat through what you said and presented today, I decided that it's absolutely pointless, because, I have nothing at all to offer that would top what I've heard. And really what I want to say is that I've been blown away by your passion, your fantastic English, but also your ideas that you've put into those mini presentations. So, really, a round of applause, because it's... Thank you. Yeah. Honestly, I feel, time has come to retire. The new generation is here. So, what can I possibly say at this point? When I've been listening to you, I scraped this talk of mine because, as I said, it's completely irrelevant. But I also kind of try and reflect upon something which is perhaps a bit of a common theme here. And that is that we kind of all know that we need a change of mindsets, don't we? Yeah. So, why do we even need to continue talking about it? And my little humble reflection is that perhaps one reason is that, if you like, words get in the way. Certain words get in the way. And it's kind of a good coincidence because we are at the beginning of a language teachers conference, so perhaps it makes sense to pause and think about certain key words in this domain which perhaps get in the way. What words? Well, let me give you a couple of examples. The first word that seems to me might get in the way is the word feedback. Now, we talk a lot about how feedback is important, don't we? We give a lot of feedback. We make chunks of lessons devoted to feedback. But Professor Hattie, one of the most famous researchers on the effectiveness of learning, once said that while a lot of feedback is given, surprisingly little feedback is received. Now, why should that be? Well, perhaps the reason is the very word. If you think with me for a moment, if you look at the word feedback, there's one bit of the word feedback which is controversial, isn't it? Which bit? But the second bit, the back. Isn't it perhaps that while working with the best possible intentions, we continue to give people feedback? What the learner actually needs desperately is the very opposite of that, which is the feed forward. In other words, the kind of advice which is not related to what they have already done, because it's history, and you cannot, in essence, do anything about it. You've written a piece of work, you've given your speech, it's done. What matters is the quality of advice that will push the learner ever so little to produce a next better attempt. So feedback is one controversial word. Second interesting controversial word is a Polish word, a word that we've all worked with, and that's why I started out in Polish, the word stopień. Have you ever wondered? Stopień. It's a fascinating word if you think about it, because inside the word stopień, there are at least two words, aren't they? The first is the word stop. And the second, can you see? What is the second one? The second one is pień. Isn't it amazing that this word simultaneously codes coercion, right? The red pen, and the potential lifting up of the learner, the pień. The third word, which I think is worth looking at, is the word learning. The word that's been used here a lot in the course of today. Now let's do that gymnastics one more time, shall we? Learning. What other word is hidden inside the word learning? Well, there are several. One is ear, but that's not the one I mean. Can you think of which word? Coincidence. Again, I mean, it's too good to be just a pure coincidence, right? So what does this mean? That if you chuck off the first letter, the universal symbol of any learner, the one that you see on driving, cars with when you're taking a course for a driving license, the remainder is earning. So what does this mean, that learning is earning? Well, I mean, not money, surely. I mean, as a language teacher, I can say, yeah. So there must be something else, right? So what is this earning bit? And in a lot of what you said, those fascinating stories of having to face the challenge, the fear, the thing that strikes me is that there is not enough focus on the fact that true learning is a positive emotion, rather than having to always overcome a negative one. And perhaps this is the narrative that we need a bit more of when we start out with a new learner. I mean, not you guys. I mean, here our job is done, but those other learners out there are not part of a public speaking contest, alas. Okay? And the final word that I would like to offer for your consideration, this is more the adults than the youngsters in the room, is the word formative, that we've discussed so much in recent years when we talk about assessment, right? Rather than summative, formative. Now, I suggest to you that this word, if it is to change anything at all, needs to regain a silent prefix. The word formative, as it stands, has got a silent prefix that we need to bring back into the fore. You know what the silent prefix is? Is the in. So the essence of true supportive assessment is not just that it's supposed to be formative, but it needs to be more informative. And as such, to maximize information which will help the learner understand where they are at the moment, where you want them to move, and how they are supposed to get there. And one perhaps final little thing, which is this is all fine, provided that it's informative and also supportive. In other words, we tell them what needs to be done, and we show them that we are always and consistently on their side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Dziękujemy serdecznie. W tym momencie właśnie Magda włosy. Rwie sobie włosy z głowy. For sure at this time Magda is counting the votes of our great jury, and you're gonna know the verdict at the official opening that begins at 12. Okay? In the main hall when the whole conference
Opens.
So thank you much for your attendance. Please wait patiently and see you soon.
Marcin.
Dziękuję bardzo. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. That's
I
fine.
know, but I forgot